Good afternoon. I now call a meeting of the National EMS Advisory Council back to order. Welcome back, representatives, staff, and members of the public. That which is true yesterday remains true today. This is a public meeting. Please hold your questions and comments until I open the floor for discussion or until the floor is open for the public comment period. Clary, I know you've been taking the roll. Do we have a quorum?
Yes, sir, we do.
Thank you. Are there any representatives present today that were absent from the meeting yesterday? If so, raise your hands or indicate online and I will recognize you. Mr. Kintard?
I was here yesterday and hand is not raised. I'm good.
Okay. Hearing none or no others, let's move on with our first order of business. Representatives, we have two speakers scheduled today. The first is Gam Widjatonga, Director of the Office of EMS, to provide an update on the NRSS post-crash care projects, initiatives, and actions. Director Widjatonga, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'll apologize up front. I'm a little congested, so I might have to take a few sips of coffee as I go just to keep my voice going. But thank you for having me here today, and I wanted to provide the council an update on the National Roadway Safety Strategy. As we've previously reported to the council, about 2.5 years ago now, the Department of Transportation adopted a goal of eliminating roadway deaths and serious injuries in the United States. So our goal is 0. And post-crash care is an integral part of our strategy towards moving towards 0 deaths. So I want to provide a brief update to the council on the progress we've made so far. Next slide, please. I think you know my team. These folks and their colleagues and others have been hard at work over the past 2.5 years on implementing the safe system approach. Next slide, please. Next slide. So as I mentioned, in moving towards 0 deaths, the department is focused on 5 main objectives: safer people, safer vehicles, safer speeds, safer roads, and post-crash care. Next slide. At the heart of post-crash care is providing expedient access to emergency medical care when people are in crashes. Next slide. Under the National Roadway Safety Strategy, we have 3 main goals that we regularly report back up to Secretary of Transportation Buttigieg. In brief, they are to improve EMS delivery and utilization of the National EMS Information System, or NEMSIS, enhance traffic incident management, and eliminate struck-by deaths on the United States roadways, and improve delivery of EMS throughout the nation so that patients survive crashes. Next slide. As the council is aware, we continue to face a scourge of highway deaths in the United States. Our NHTSA's early estimates for 2023 are that over 41,000 people died on U.S. roadways, so less than the 42,939 that died in 2021, but still far too many. And part of our challenge is that of these fatalities, 40% are still alive when the EMS arrives on the scene, but then die within a 30-day period. Next slide, please. As we've previously highlighted, using both NEMSIS and NFIRS data from the U.S. Fire Administration, we know that in 2021, we had nearly 8,800 patients that were completely or partially ejected from their vehicles. We had over 48,500 incidents involving vehicle extrication, and we had nearly 170,000 responses to seriously injured crash patients. These are crash patients that likely would have died without intervention. Next slide. In order to save these lives, we have to undertake a number of countermeasures focused on broad EMS system improvement, including utilization of emergency medical dispatch, timely on-scene care, transport to trauma center, and of course, performance measurement for the entire system of care. Next slide. So I did want to, of course, again thank the council for the letter that you issued to NHTSA on priorities for improving post-crash care. We've paid close attention to your recommendations and continue to focus on implementing those. Today, I'm going to really zero in on how some of the funding from the bipartisan infrastructure law has been used to improve post-crash care across the country. You see on my slide there that says currently it's greater than $3 billion still available for future funding. It's probably far in excess of that, but it's at least $3 billion that is still available in appropriations. I'm just going to highlight 4 programs, and I'm going to be sending a lot of acronyms your way. One is the Section 402 Highway Safety Program, the Section 405 National Priority Safety Programs, 405C and 405H, the Safe Streets and Roads for All Grant Program, a new program created under bill, and the Strengthening Mobility and Revolutionizing Transportation, or SMART Grant Program. Next slide. So Section 402 Highway Safety Programs, these are grant programs that NHTSA has administered to the state highway safety offices for over 50 years. Overall funding for this program increased by approximately 50% under the bipartisan infrastructure law. Next slide. An example of a recent award under this program is approximately $1.7 million that went as a subgrant through the California Office of Traffic Safety to the LA EMS Authority. And this is a mix of funds from the 402 General Highway Safety Programs as well as the 405C Traffic Safety Data Program. The grant to the LA EMS Authority is to improve training in the field for responding to trauma and also to improve data linkage across all LA EMS Authority EMS agencies, hospital emergency departments, and trauma centers. Next slide. A new grant program created by bill was the Section 405H program on preventing roadside deaths. This is approximately $1 million that's available to each state and territory under bill. Next slide. And the state of Maine was one of the earliest recipients of 405H funding, which they are using to support vehicle to everything, or V2X technology, to outfit all their ambulances and EMS vehicles with transponders as well as high-speed internet across the state. Next slide. We have talked previously about the SS4A grant program. It's a 5-year grant program funded at approximately $1 billion per year. Next slide. SS4A is a direct grant program to local government agencies and metropolitan planning organizations. So it does not go through the state, it goes directly to local grantees. In the first year of the program, the Upper Pine River Fire Protection District in Colorado was awarded approximately over $200,000 to develop a comprehensive safety action plan for their jurisdiction focused on post-crash care. Next slide. One of the most recent awards announced in, I think, about January under FY23 was an approximately $2.4 million grant to the town of Colony for their comprehensive highway safety action plan, which will support emergency transponders and emergency alerting, as well as improved data linkage. Next slide. Another new grant program created under bill is the SMART Grant Program. This is approximately $100 million a year over the course of the infrastructure law, and public sector agencies are eligible to apply to support implementation of existing advanced technology. Next slide. Just announced earlier this year under the SMART Grant Program is a grant to the Southern Alleghenies Planning and Development Commission in Pennsylvania, approximately $2 million to support use of drones to deliver Narcan and AEDs directly to the scene of 911 calls. Again, this was just awarded, so we're very, very excited to watch this as it is implemented. Next slide. So one of the things my office and our federal partners is focused on is continuing to get the word out about these grant programs to let local EMS agencies know that they may actually fall under an existing planning grant that's already been awarded. Encourage folks to go on the SS4A website and see if their local metropolitan planning organization already has a grant in place for a comprehensive highway safety action plan, because now is the time to talk to them about improving post-crash care. Next slide. Again, we have links up on ems.gov leading you to all these grant programs, and we're always available to answer questions. Next slide. That might be the last one. Next slide. Yeah, encourage folks to go up on ems.gov and 911.gov and get involved in the process. This is really a historic opportunity to improve post-crash care and improve survival as we implement the safe system approach. So happy to entertain any questions.
Any questions for GAM? Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Director, for being here. It's always a pleasure to see you. Is it safe to assume that none of these grants, that private for profit, are not eligible for any of these grants, these types of grants?
Not eligible as a direct grantee, but certainly private for-profits can collaborate with local government agencies to be involved in the process, and we have certainly seen that.
Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions for Mr. Woodchitonga? GAM, thank you again for coming today and that excellent presentation, and thank you certainly for your work on behalf of EMS and the work of your team at the Office of EMS.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, moving on. Next up is Jeremiah Kingsman, EMS specialist from the Office of EMS. Jeremy leads some of the research efforts that incorporate national data element aggregated in the National EMS Information System, or NEMSIS. He is here to discuss those national data elements and provide insight about how those are used for research. Jeremy, the floor is yours.
All right, thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to see if I can share my screen. So give me just a second here. Okay, bear with me. Okay. So thanks very much for the opportunity to present today. I'm just going to start by saying, I'm working presenting from home today, so I occasionally have some Wi-Fi issues. So if that happens, bear with me. I will switch from my home Wi-Fi over to my hotspot on my phone. So if I get disconnected, please just hang in there, and I will try to reconnect quickly. Again, thanks for the opportunity to present today. I'm joined by Mr. Chris Hoffman from the NEMSIS Technical Assistance Center, who will be co-presenting with me. I'm gonna start, as the chairman mentioned, by giving an overview of our NEMSIS data elements that we collect at the national level. We heard from Tom Arkins, the chair of the subcommittee on systems integration and technology, that there was some interest among the committee in learning a little bit more about the data elements that are included within the NEMSIS data standard, and of those, which ones we collect at the national level. So that's primarily what my presentation will focus on. And then I'm going to hand it over to Chris to talk about a really interesting and great product that they've developed at the NEMSIS TAC that's focused on education and training for data managers. And so I think we think that's particularly pertinent given the recommendation that's currently in draft form that Systems Integration Committee has been working on. kind of highlighting the need for more education and training around data management in the EMS space. So looking forward to seeing the final version of that recommendation so that our office and our partners at the NEMSIS TAC can address the recommendations sufficiently. Okay. So just real quickly, this first set of slides, I think Dr. Clay Mann and Eric Cheney from our office may have talked a little bit about some of these pieces on a prior presentation for the committee, but I just want to go back over a few things here. So the NEMSIS data standard, the NEMSIS, the National EMS Information System, does a lot of great things. And if you think back to the 1990s, at that time, healthcare was transitioning from paper documentation to electronic documentation. And so the National Association of State EMS Directors came to NHTSA. The CDC was also involved at that time and said, can you help us implement something like this in the EMS space? And so that's really what NEMSIS set out to do. It set out to create a data standard system that would kind of help us to collect, validate, store, and share EMS data that could be collected in a standardized way across the country. So it didn't matter which state you were working in, what your EMS agency type was. We wanted to be able to collect the same set of data in the same way in a timely manner so that we could do things at the state and national level related to benchmarking and analytics and data analysis that would help to inform our kind of protocols and evidence-based guidelines. And that's really kind of what NEMSIS set out to do. Just another quick slide here. So the NEMSIS data standard includes, I think, 640 elements. And so the bottom circle here is a little bit misleading because we don't collect all 640 of those elements at the national level. I think what a better term here for this blue circle would be like the NEMSIS data standard. That includes 640 elements. Our partners at the local level collect a subset of that. And at the state level, an either smaller subset is collected. And at the national level, we collect 155 elements. So I think, as I mentioned earlier, NSEMSO kind of coming to us and asking us to do this, from 2000 to 2010, as we were kind of building the NEMSIS data standard, the idea was to have a data standard that could capture anything and everything that was possible within the EMS setting, knowing that not every system was going to collect all of those elements. And so that's really what that NHTSA data set kind of circled there represents. If you look over on the right, this is a screenshot of the NEMSIS data dictionary that's specific to the eVitals section. And one of the things you'll notice is that to the right of each of the data element titles are these circles and letters. So you can see there's a red N, there's this kind of yellow S, a grade R, and there's a legend here up the top. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about this when I get to the NEMSIS website to show you some resources. But when you see this red N, that means it's an element that we collect at the national level. When you see the S, that means it's recommended by NSEMSO, kind of in coordination with our office and the NEMSIS TAC. They've kind of identified elements that are recommended that states collect. And the R means that it's required. So what does that mean? That means it's required to be part of the NEMSIS data standard. This element is required. So every EMT and paramedic across the country, when they're filling out an electronic patient care report, they have to have this element available to them to be part of the NEMSIS data standard. So it is required. It's part of the national level. It is required, but it's not mandatory. The mandatory elements do not allow a not value. They don't allow a not applicable or a not recorded. So this is a required element, but it's not mandatory. And the reason it's not mandatory, this element I'm looking at here is date, time that the vital signs were taken. It's possible you could be activated to respond, but you never encounter a patient because maybe in a multi-tiered system, another unit gets there first and cancels you and says, we can take care of this. Or you arrive on scene and you're never able to find the patient, right? So there's got to be, that's a scenario where this is an element that we collect at the national level. It's required, but it's not mandatory because there's cases where you might not document the date time that vitals were taken. All right, and then the only other thing I'll mention here is like we do have web services and we have schematron associated with the NEMSIS data standard. So the web services allows electronic patient care record vendors to submit data to the state. It allows the state to submit data to the national level. It allows for information sharing between an EPCR product and devices like a monitor. It allows those local agencies to share their data with hospitals and health systems. And our schematron piece is what helps us to validate the NEMSIS data that is collected. It applies rules to the data that's collected. All right. And then just a couple more slides, just kind of slides here describing NEMSIS and the NEMSIS data standard. So all 50 states, the District of Columbia, and 3 territories collect and submit version 3 data to the NEMSIS TAC. We have moved from NEMSIS version 3.4 to 3.5. I think there's about 5 or 6 states that have not yet transitioned to version 3.5. You can kind of see how the NEMSIS data that's collected at the national level has expanded over time. So from 2010 to 2017, we were on NEMSIS version 2. And in 2017, the NEMSIS TAC stopped collecting version 2 data and started exclusively collecting version 3 data. So that's why you kind of see that transition year. And then over time, as we've brought more states and local EMS agencies onto NEMSIS version 3, the number of records has expanded, almost exponentially here. And in 2023, we collected just over 54 million records. NEMSIS data is extremely timely. So this is a screenshot of a dashboard that their partners at the NEMSIS TAC regularly monitor. And what it indicates is that on average, about 87% of the EMS responses and activations that occur today, we will collect at the national level. We will collect about 87 of those within 2 days. So it's extremely timely. I mentioned this a little bit already, but essentially, if you have 3 different agencies who are using different software, they may be using different software products, but if they're all based on the NEMSIS data standard, because the NEMSIS data standard has this singular XML structure and it uses web services, it doesn't matter what software you're using, it'll seamlessly integrate with medical devices, with 911 call centers, and it also allows us to submit this data very fast from the point of care when the record's closed up to the state database and onto the national database. Okay, I'm going to run through a series of slides here. There are QR codes. And so I think we'll provide this slide deck to the committee so that you can, at a future date, you can access the QR codes. I'm going to go through a couple of quick slides here and then transition to a web browser to go through some of these resources. But so I'm going to show a few more details about the NEMSIS data dictionaries. I'm going to just do a quick overview of this heat-related dashboard that I think is going to help highlight kind of how we take that national data and incorporate it into a dashboard. And I'll show you how to access those dashboards and also where you can find the companion guide that provides some information about about the inclusion criteria for the dashboard and the types of information that we collect at the national level is incorporated into the dashboard. I've got a QR code here for a great ICD-10 resource that I think may be of value to the committee. And then I'll real quickly just show you how to access the NEMSIS data cube. Okay, and then I'll come back to the PowerPoint and transition things over to Chris. So let me pull this up real quick. So this is the NEMSIS website, and if you click on this technical resources tab here, you will find the data dictionaries. There are data dictionaries for NEMSIS version 3.5, which, as I mentioned earlier, almost all states have transitioned to version 3.5 now. There are also resources for NEMSIS version 3.4. A lot of our historic data is based on NEMSIS version 3.4. So if you are utilizing some of our public release research data sets to do analysis, most of that data is based on this version 3.4 data standard. But for the purposes of today's conversation, I'm going to focus on the NEMSIS version 3.5 data dictionary resources. So if you are interested in knowing just about the elements that we collect at the national level, a good place to start is this PDF right here. And I want to point out a couple of things. So this is the top of the PDF. So I had a slide earlier about this, but I'll just reiterate it here. There are 155 elements that we collect at the national level. In total, again, there are 640 that are in the NEMSIS version 3.5 data standard. Of those, some are specific to EMS, to the response, the activation response, assessment, care, and transport that is provided during an EMS event. Some of them are demographic elements. So those are elements that are specific to the EMS agency, the type of agency. Is it a fire-based agency? Is it a private agency? Is it a tribal agency? And so those don't change from call to call. So an EMT or paramedic, when they're out on a call, they're not providing these demographic elements. This is something that that local EMS agencies, in coordination with their state, provide to the NEMSIS TAC. And then there's also a state data set elements. There's 47 of those. Those allow a state to kind of customize and add elements that they want to collect that are not part of the NEMSIS data standard, essentially. So I mentioned this earlier about mandatory and required. So this is showing kind of the changes that we made from version 3.4 to 3.5. We actually, in moving to 3.5, we decreased the number of national elements that are collected. We have 32 that are mandatory. So those are, again, elements that do not allow for a not value. They don't allow a not recorded or not applicable. There are another 123 that we collect at the national level, but they do allow for a not value. And so as you scroll down through this data dictionary, there's a table of contents here, and there are elements grouped under section types. So elements related to e-response. So the type of service requested. There's some information about delays. There's dispatch times. And so that's in the PDF. And again, this PDF is specific to the data that we collect at the national level. So if you're really just kind of interested in wanting to find out more about those 155 elements that we collect at the national level, that's the resource that you would go to. I'm going to transition back here and go to this web-based resource very quickly, because I think it's a little bit easier when you're on the web to navigate. This is not specific to national elements. This includes all 640 data elements. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier on a slide, but I'll just show you again. Let's go to the e-response section. So if you click on e-response, then you're going to see all of the elements that are in the e-response section. And here's those categorizations that I mentioned earlier. So let's take a look at type of service requested. So type of service requested, this is an element that we collect at the national level. So obviously then it's going to be state recommended, and it is mandatory. What does that mean? So that means every time an EPCR record is completed, this element has to be filled out by the EMT or paramedic to meet the NEMSIS data standard and to be accepted by the National EMS database. So it doesn't allow for a not value. Let me find one that does. So then there's this next kind of group here of different types of delays. So you can see this is a national element, but it's not mandatory. It is required. So it has to be available to every EMT and paramedic to have the option to document if there's some type of dispatch delay. but it does allow for a not value because not every response is going to have a dispatch delay. So I'm hoping this is somewhat helpful to kind of give you an overview of these different resources for where you can go and find out more information about the types of elements that we collect at the national level, whether they're mandatory or required. What are the elements that we recommend to states that they collect? And these other elements are ones that we don't necessarily recommend that the state collect, for example, standby purpose, but it could be of value to a local EMS agency. And so a local EMS agency, if they want to add this to their product, it's part of the NEMSIS data standard. They just have to tell their EPCR vendor, hey, we want you to add this standby purpose element to our product so that our EMS clinicians can document that information. Okay, let's see. I'm going to go back here real quickly and show you the public reports. And I'm going to click on this version 3 dashboards. And here's all the dashboards that the NEMSIS TAC has created. And I'm going to show you this heat-related dashboard. And rather than giving you an overview of the dashboard, what I'm going to do is just show you the dashboard. So if you're interested in learning about those national data elements that I just showed you that are part of the NEMSIS data standard that we collect at the national level, how would they be incorporated into this dashboard? Here's the inclusion criteria. So you can see patient care reports where the primary symptom, other associated symptoms, the provider's primary impression, or the provider's secondary impression includes one of these following ICD-10 codes. So each of these data elements, it doesn't have a list of identified field values that the clinician would choose from. It's based on the ICD-10 standards. And so if you're interested in learning more about what each of these ICD-10 codes, like more detailed definition, you can click on here and it will take you to this website where I had a slide and a QR code, and it provides you some more detail about what that ICD-10 code means. Okay, and then the last thing I want to show you is back to the public reports and the EMS data cube. And I'm going to click on Connect to EMS Data Cube. Before I do that, I want to show you that there are some resources here that provide some instructions on how to utilize this EMS data cube. So there's the videos, there's the supplemental guide that I think are great and are really useful tools. So if you haven't used the data cube before, I would suggest starting with some of those videos. When you click on the data cube, this is where you come, and I'm just gonna, again, these steps are explained to you in those videos and that supplemental guide. And so all of the national data elements are listed here on the left. And so you can you can maximize some of these. So for example, if you were interested in emergency responses, you could come in here and click on type of service requested. Let me zoom out a little bit. If you're interested in just seeing maybe a distribution for type of service requested, you could pop it in there, and then you're going to come up here and you're going to click on count of events. There's 123 records. This includes data that was collected for the first 4 months of this year plus 2023 and 2022. And if you expand that, you can sort it. And so you can see of those 123 million records, 97 million were related to an EMS emergency response to that agency's primary response area. Okay. So that's some of the things that you can do in the cube. You can do crosstabs, you can add percentages, you can download this information into an Excel file or a PDF. So it's a really a great tool to use and kind of explore the NEMSIS data that we collect at the national level. And I think that's it. So what I'm going to do is bring back up the PowerPoint and let me swap this. And I'll hand it over to Chris. And I'm going to stop my video. And Chris, just let me know when you're ready for me to advance a slide.
No problem. Thank you so much, Jeremy. Thank you for all that great information, and thank you everybody on the committee. I'm always honored to come and talk about all the great work that my team is doing on and my colleagues are doing at NEMSIS. So as you saw with the information that Jeremy was presenting, as a new state EMS data manager, you could come into the job, and with a varying amount of backgrounds, people come into that position either coming from EMS or from data systems, lots of backgrounds into those systems, and then suddenly there's a lot of information to digest about the NEMSIS system, about the different types of files. We're no different than any other type of medical system where it is you're awash in acronyms and such that you have to understand. And so we were getting requests from people to say, is there a place that we could get this information? Because we were spending a lot of time with people when they were first coming into the job, telling a lot of people a lot of the same information and such. And we noticed we could get all of this information down. And then the magic of having it in a interactive resource is the ability to go back to it, listen to it again, go over the information at your fingertips. And so that was the sort of the genesis of the state manager training. This was designed to be sort of information that people in the first year of their as being a state manager could come in and get all of the information that they need to get up and running as quickly as possible. We run this through a learning management system called Moodle. If you are familiar with that, it's a very robust learning management system that has all of the features you would expect out of an online learning system. What you'll see here is this is a platform, right? Moodle is a platform. So this NEMSIS State Manager Training is the first, hopefully, of many courses that we will have in here that are going to help with the mission of NEMSIS. As of now, when you go in and you see the available courses, you have the State Manager Training. And we start off letting people getting to know each other. Everybody who is working in the space and interested in this information, we have state data managers, but the original intent was for that, but there's been such a there's been so much interest in this course that now there are EMS vendors, there are researchers, there's really everyone that has access to this course. So you get a chance to introduce yourself, set up your login, join our mailing list so that people can be notified when NEMSIS has events and trainings and such, the new videos on our YouTube channel, those types of things. And so that it gives a chance for people to get to know each other. One of the things that state managers really need is support from each other, seeing what they're doing in each other's state. And so this is another chance for them to connect and be able to learn from each other. Jeremy, if you could do the next slide, please. And so what we did is for about a year, we created content for this course, and right now in the course we have 16 videos, which is 3.5 hours of video. It feels like a double-edged sword to tell people that, because it feels like, wow, that's a lot of content, as in like it's great that we have all this content. It can also seem daunting to say how that is a extended cut of one of the Lord of the Rings movies to watch about EMS data. And so one of the things that we tell people is that there is a handy feature. These videos are all hosted in YouTube, and there's a handy feature in there so that you can actually play the videos at 1.5 speed, double speed. And that'll take a 15-minute video down to 7.5 minutes, and you're still getting the good information out of it. The great thing about a video, you can pause, rewind, watch it as many times as you want to get and catch all of that information. We have a mix of videos that are from the different partners that we work with and from the different team members of NEMSIS. And I assure you, we did not hire Disney or Pixar to do the animated segments on there. That was all in-house animation that we're very proud of, so that there is an animated character that does go over some of the information in here, which I think is really cool and fun in the in the presentations.
Hey, Chris. Chris?
Yes, sir.
Could I ask you to hold for one moment, please? Because we've
Yes.
run into the public comment period, and I do
Oh, my
need to
apologies.
make sure that we at least see if there's any public comment. And if you just hang for 1 second, we'll get through the public comment period just to be respectful of that period. Clary, any new
Certainly.
comments, feedback, or questions coming in from the web chat feature?
No, sir.
Okay. Anyone sign up to speak today?
No, sir.
Okay, if you can just monitor the chat, we'll go back to Chris. And Chris, we do have about 5 minutes left before we have to move on to the advancement of advisories. So I just want to make sure that we give you enough time to finish your presentation.
Perfect. Yes, I'll be certainly done before then. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
Not at all. Appreciate it. Yeah, next slide would be fine, please. As a self-directed and interactive course, this information has quizzes that participants can take, and these are self-directed, self-reporting quizzes, self-assessments. There's no credits involved. There's nowhere that this is going to be kept in a database or anything like that. This is 100% just so that users, when they go through the course, they can take a quiz and see and assess themselves on how much of the information they retained, and if they want to take that, go through that information one more time to solidify their information. We can go to the next slide, please. So Jeremy was going over all of our wonderful resources. When we do talk about a resource in the course, we do have a link to that resource. So this can become a hub of your information. So if as soon as information is being talked about, it is your option to be able to go straight to those supporting documents, whether that be the data dictionary, grant guidance documents, public research data set, anything that we talk about in the course is ready at your fingertips. I know sometimes there's people who will, when you're explaining something, you're watching the video, it makes perfect sense, but then when you're actually putting it into practice, something gets lost. And so it is I remember them talking about in this video, and then where was that data dictionary? It's an opportunity. You can go back into the course and have a link to all of those, a convenient link to all of those resources. And yeah, so as it stands now, I had a list of members of the committee that I was given. You may have received an email already saying that you now have a Moodle account and giving you your username and password. If you did not get that email or you need another copy of it, I'm happy to get the contact information over to the committee so that you can get in touch with us, and I can resend that email or get you signed up for it. And as of today, you should have access to that information so that you can go through that information and check it out for yourselves. And that's everything. Thank you so much. Oh, if you do want to connect with NEMSIS, we do have all of our social media accounts here. Or you can get to our website where we do also have our contact information if you do have more questions or need to get back in touch with us. Thank you very much. And Jeremy, I'll hand it back to you.
Thanks, Chris. That was great. I know we don't have a lot of time. Any questions for Chris or myself?
I just want to thank you guys for coming in and talking about this. I know NEMSIS is a big project. We do discuss NEMSIS during a lot of our meetings, so it's good to just know a little bit more information about it and what resources are available.
Any other questions from the council? Oh, I'm sorry, Brad. Brad? Mr. Eustochian?
Yeah, thanks. One question. So injury assessments of motor vehicle crashes are also a performance measure that the state's kind of used from a highway safety perspective. What role could NEMSIS play in maybe increasing the accuracy of those in-field assessments that are currently done by police officers. Is the data here, is it feasible to consider this as an alternative for determining injury severity, or is that kind of a stretch? Right now there's a lot of variability from state to state as terms of what constitutes a serious injury and what doesn't. Just wondered what your perspective was.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, our EMS data, it's not, I would say for our law enforcement officers, their primary role is not to accurately define how injured someone is. I mean, they do great work, but I don't think that they certainly don't have the same level of medical training regarding assessment and care that our EMS clinicians do. And so I think that's why we feel confident, one, that our EMS clinicians are in a better position to document injury severity, and the NEMSIS data standard and the elements that are there allow us to also do that in a more accurate way. And so our partners at the NEMSIS TAC have had some really good success with using ICD-10 codes in those fields to identify someone who's been involved in a motor vehicle crash. And then they have an accurate serious injury definition that uses the revised trauma score, which you may be familiar with, which is based on systolic blood pressure, GCS, and I think respiratory rate, is that right? Which calculates a score and then can be, and then from that you can determine a survival probability. So they've used that kind of physiological marker, and then some structured data elements. If the patient had a trauma activation alert that was documented in one of the structured data elements, I'm missing the third piece, but there's three elements that they have to their serious injury definition that I think does a better job of kind of identifying those patients who are seriously injured. And that's something that we've certainly used at the national level, and in the infographics that my office director, Gamwi Jitunga, presented before, those are based on those definitions. And so we're happy to connect with you, Brad, and make sure that whatever, wherever you're located, whatever EMS agency you're affiliated with or working with, or if you're at the state level, just to make sure that they're kind of aware of kind of the value of that NEMSIS data for those traffic crash purposes.
Appreciate the response. Thank you.
Yep.
We have one final question. Dr. Uwasawasa?
No, I'll just make this quick. Jeremy and Chris, do you mind just leaving your email addresses in the chat, and I will ask you offline, please, for
Sure.
the sake of
Yeah.
time. Thank you for this
Absolutely.
presentation. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Bye.
Jeremy and Chris, thank you so much for coming today. It was an excellent presentation. Certainly a wealth of information. We really do appreciate all the work that you do. Okay, moving on. In some facilitated discussion, we talked quite a bit about our advisories yesterday, both in the subcommittee meetings yesterday and this morning. Just want to make sure there's no questions from anyone on any of the topics that we discussed or anything that needs further clarification before we move to the advancement of the advisories. Hearing none, or seeing none, we will move on. Typically at this point, we would be looking to advance ideas to move forward for advisories. We have not promulgated any in this session. However, I don't want any of the members of the EMS community to think that we have not been hard at work. We actually have 20 advisories in development, in various stages of development, and 3 active letters in development. So there's quite a bit of work going on in the background. And I am certain at our next meeting, which occurs in August, there will be more advisories that will be promulgated. So we'll look forward to that as they develop over time. Our next order of business is to vote to mature the advisory topics and the advisories into their next phases. We will start with the Adaptability and Innovation Subcommittee chaired by David Pfeiffer. He has presented the following advisory for consideration: designation of graduate-prepared paramedics as federally recognized practitioners. What is the will of the council regarding this advisory?
I'll make a motion to pass.
There is a motion and a second to advance. All in favor, unmute and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed, unmute and say nay. Any abstentions, unmute and abstain.
Abstain.
With noting one abstention. The motion carries. Congratulations, Mr. Pfeiffer and the subcommittee. Next up is the Integration Technology Subcommittee chaired by Mr. Thomas Arkins. He has presented the following advisory for consideration. EMS Data Manager Career Pathways. Mr. Arkin, what is the will of the council regarding this advisory?
I'd like to move this to a final.
Okay, there is a recommendation to move this to final.
Second.
Is there a second? All in favor, please unmute and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please unmute and say nay. Any abstentions, please unmute and say abstain. Next up, again, is the Integration and Technology Subcommittee has also presented the following advisory for consideration. Best practices for use of interpreter resources in the pre-hospital setting. This would be moving to draft. What is the will of the council regarding this advisory?
We would like to move this to the draft phase.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have multiple seconds. There's a motion on the floor to accept best practices for use of interpreter resources in the pre-hospital setting. It has been seconded. All in favor, please unmute and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed,
Aye.
please unmute and say nay. Any abstentions, please unmute and say abstain. And the motion passes. Next up is the Preparedness and Education Subcommittee chaired by Lisa Baskell. She has presented the following advisory for consideration. Large-scale event EMS planning and preparedness. What is the will of the council regarding this advisory?
I'd like to make a motion to move the advisory forward.
There is a motion on the floor to approve the advisory, to move to advisory to final large-scale events EMS planning and preparedness for maturation to final. Is there a second?
Second.
There are multiple seconds. There is a motion on the floor to approve the large-scale events EMS planning and preparedness for maturation to final. It has been seconded. All in favor, unmute and your mics and please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, unmute and say nay. Any abstentions, please unmute and say abstain. The motion passes. Next is the Preparedness and Education Subcommittee has also presented the following advisory for consideration. EMS response to active incidents, a multifaceted approach to preparedness and coordination. What is the will of the council regarding this advisory?
I'll make a motion to move the advisory forward from research to draft.
There is a motion on the floor to approve the advisory large-scale events EMS planning and preparedness for maturation to draft. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. There's a motion on the floor to approve. All in favor, and a second. All in favor, please unmute and say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed, please unmute and say nay. Any abstentions, please unmute and say abstain. Next up, the motion passes. Next up is the Professional Safety Subcommittee, chaired by Carol Jorgensen, has presented the following advisory for consideration. Crash scene safety. What is the will of the council regarding this advisory?
I would like to make a motion to move this advisory from interim status to final status.
Is there a second?
Second.
There is a motion on the floor to approve the advisory crash scene safety for maturation to final, and it has been seconded. All in favor, please unmute and say aye.
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 If there are any oppositions, please unmute and say nay. And if there are any abstentions, please unmute and say abstain. The motion passes. The Ad Hoc Subcommittee on Ambulance Crash, chaired by Dr. Mark Gestring, has presented the following advisory for consideration. Development of a comprehensive national ambulance crash data collection platform to better understand current crashes and guide future preventative strategies. What is the will of the council on this advisory?
We propose advancement from interim to final status.
There is a motion on the floor to advance the advisory development of a comprehensive national ambulance crash data collection platform to better understand current crashes and guide future preventative strategies for maturation to final. Will it be seconded?
Second.
Hearing a second, a motion is on the floor to advance to final. All in favor, please unmute and say aye.
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 Any opposed, please unmute and say nay. And any abstentions, please unmute and say abstain. Congratulations, Dr. Gestring. Next up are the vote to mature letters. The Equitable Patient Care Subcommittee, chaired by Dr. Jason McMullen, has presented the following consideration. Letter to FICAM's Pre-Hospital Pediatric Readiness Project and Support. What is your will with this, Dr. McMullen?
The subcommittee would like to promote this from draft to final so it can be sent.
There is a motion on the floor to finalize the letter to FICUMS regarding pre-hospital pediatric readiness support. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please unmute and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please unmute and say nay. Any abstentions, please unmute and say abstain. The motion passes. Next up is the Preparedness and Education Subcommittee chaired by Lisa Baskell. She has presented the following for consideration. Letter to FICUMS, Exertional Heat Emergencies and EMS Response. Lisa, what is your will?
I'd like to propose we move this letter from research to draft.
There is a motion on the floor to move the letter Exertional Heat Emergencies and EMS Response to draft. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please unmute and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please unmute and say nay. Any abstentions, please unmute and say abstain. The motion passes. Next is the Professional Safety Subcommittee chaired by Carol Jorgensen, who has presented the following for consideration. Letter to FICUMS, quantifying workplace violence against EMS clinicians. Carol, what is your will?
I would like to make a motion to take this letter from research into a draft status.
There is a motion to take the letter quantifying workplace violence against EMS clinicians from research into draft. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please unmute and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, unmute and say nay. Any abstentions, please unmute and say abstain. The motion passes. Congratulations to all the subcommittee on your amazing work. That's a lot. Congratulations. A lot of work goes into putting these forward, and we look forward to all of these being promulgated, through the appropriate channels at FICUMS and beyond on behalf of the EMS industry. Next up is our strategic planning conversation, and just a brief discussion about terms. At this time, all members of NEMSAC have either been appointed or reappointed through April 2025. Just as a reminder, the following representatives have been reappointed to the council and are ineligible to serve another term, so they must step down and be replaced at the end of their current term. Hospital-based EMS, Mr. Paul Brennan. Tribal EMS, Dr. Danita Kohler. Local EMS directors or administrators, Lisa Baskell. Trauma surgeons, Dr. Mark Gestring. EMS data manager, Mr. Thomas Arkins. EMS researchers, Dr. Jason McMullen. Hospital administrators, Brendan Hayden. Public health, Ms. Carol Jorgensen. EMS practitioners, Mr. David Pfeiffer. Legislators, Senator Suzanne Prentice. And consumers, Dr. Ao Orgonzola. The following representatives were recently appointed for the first term and are eligible to serve a second term upon expiration of their current appointment in April of 2025. Educators, Mr. Daniel Gerard. Quality improvement, Mr. Mike Tagman. Volunteers, Mr. Wade Miles. State EMS directors, Chief Justin Romanello. Air Medical, Evelyn Byers. Medical directors, Dr. Brandon Morchetti. Emergency physicians, Dr. Kendall McKenzie. Pediatric emergency physicians, Dr. Sylvia Awasu-Asu. PSAP call takers and dispatchers in 911, Mr. Casey Kintard. Emergency nurses, Ms. Tabitha Vaughn. Emergency management, Dr. Frank Quintero. State highway safety, Mr. Bradley Estoshan. Private EMS, Mr. Mike Thomas. And fire-based EMS, Ms. Corey Condren. Dr. Gestring, I would like to congratulate you and thank you and the members of the ad hoc subcommittee on the ambulance crash for your efforts in getting this advisory passed. Development of a comprehensive national ambulance crash data collection platform to better understand current crashes and guide future preventative strategies. This advisory has been in the works for over 4 years, and you are finally able to get this over the finish line through a lot of hard work on the part of you and your subcommittee. Congratulations to you and the team that came before you that worked on this. Now that the work is completed, the ad hoc subcommittee on the ambulance crash is now dissolved. But don't fret, we'll find more work for you in the coming months. That wraps up all the issues that have been brought to my attention. Are there any other items that need to be discussed on our punch list or any other items that need to be raised for the good of the council? Okay, we've had a pretty interesting couple days. I think some of the more exciting presentations that we've seen as a body I think hearing from our friends at NASA about care in space, and then being brought back down to Earth to understand the challenges that are faced in ambulance deserts, as well as how patients are cared for both in airports and on flights, really helps to shape, along with the many other great presentations we had, helps to really shape the work that we do and how we do it. I think we've had some really positive discussions over the last few days about things that we'd like to hear in the future and groups we'd like to see and hear from as we move forward, and efforts that we have as a body to continue to promote the work of NEMSAC and to make sure the public is aware, the EMS public is aware of the work that we're doing and their ability to communicate directly with us to be able to help advance the EMS industry. Thank you for those members of the public who've joined us virtually. A very special thank you to our speakers and presenters. Thank you to the council representatives who have traveled here to Washington to participate in this meeting, and thank you to the representatives who have joined us virtually. Your willingness to serve as your sector representatives is highly valued and much appreciated. Special thank you to the Office of EMS, led by Gamwa Jatanga, and the representatives who are here today who did their best to try and keep us in line. Our next meeting is tentatively scheduled for August 7th and 8th, 2024, here in the nation's capital. The meeting will remain tentatively scheduled until the official announcement by way of the notice of the Federal Register. For those of you who are listening, as we mentioned yesterday, you can all sign up to be notified through the Federal Register and custom tailor your responses so that you can get information on upcoming meetings and announcements that are pertinent to the work that you do. For those that subscribe to the EMS newsletter at ems.gov, look for the venue details in your email. For those who have not subscribed, please subscribe. Go to www.ems.gov and subscribe so you can get all these current updates. One further item of note before we adjourn is that the public comment portal that became active since 2024 remains open, and we look forward to public comment and helping to shape advisories and helping to develop advisories and letters that this council takes on. It's important that the EMS public understand that we are their voice, and without their voice, it's just our voices. So please, come forward, give us feedback, give us ideas, tell us your problems, let us understand the challenges that you experience on a daily basis working in EMS so that we can do our best to try and create advisories that are value add and help to address many of those issues. Moving forward, the public will be able to use that public comment link to access all of NEMSAC's advisories in draft and interim phases for maturation in PDF format. Between NEMSAC meetings, advisories will be updated, so it will be important to pay attention to those dates associated with each file. When you click on the PDF you want to read, you'll see the version of the advisory with the changes edited and tracked, meaning you will be able to see how the public comment and feedback may prompt edits given to any advisory. I will tell the members of the public who are listening today, your comments shape all of our advisories, and we take all of them to heart when we build these advisories or amend and edit them. In addition to advisory access, this portal also provides an interface for receiving feedback and/or comments from the public. So when you're finished inspecting a NEMSAC advisory, you'll be able to click on the newly bookmarked link and access the portal again and edit your comments there. Comments and feedback entered through this portal are emailed directly to NHTSA's Office of EMS, and these comments will be shared with the National EMS Advisory Council. Anyone interested in having that link should contact Clary Mole at clary, C-L-A-R-Y.mole, M-O-L-E, at dot.gov for it. When he responds with a link, be sure to bookmark it for future references. Now, is there any other business to discuss today?
Just that I just dropped a link in the chat, so anybody paying attention to the meeting today, have a look at the chat interface. The link is there. Thank you.
Thank you, Clary. Any other comments or questions?
Go again.
Gam?
Just one quick comment. I know you all were fascinated by my PowerPoint presentation earlier. So the bipartisan infrastructure law, which is the largest transportation infrastructure law in U.S. history, did a number of things, not only funding, but also created several new advisory councils throughout the Department of Transportation. And I do want to just shine a light on the NEMSAC and Clary as well, because this council and the work that you've done has really been the guideposts for setting up several of these new advisory councils. Basically, it's turned Clary into one of the most popular staff members in NHTSA. So, and what I've heard across the board from my leadership and in other modes of DOT is that this council is exceptionally well run and well structured, and folks are modeling what they're attempting to do based on your work. So hats off to you all, and maybe we'll get a camera shot of Clary as well, just to embarrass him.
Little round of applause for Clary. And Kate and her jam.
But you can't take him from us.
Thank you very much, Gam. Tom?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Just to remind everybody, this week, or this month is EMS Appreciation Week, May 19th through the 25th. So thank you, everybody from the NIMSAC Council who's watching for doing what you're doing. And it actually is the 50th anniversary of it this year. So please make sure your crews are taken care of.
Great. Thank you, Tom. Any other comments before I call for adjournment? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. There is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please unmute and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Any abstentions, abstain. The council is now in adjournment.